Welcome back to the Fitness, Wellness, and Longevity Podcast. Today, my guest was Dr. Hessam Khatami of Atlantic Grove Chiropractic and the founder of FTX Wellness. Today was an opportunity to sit down with a good friend of mine, Hessam. I've known him for close to 10 years now. He's not only my chiropractor, but I am also his fitness coach as well, and I do programming for him for lifestyle and fitness factors. We got to talking about different things like the start of his career, how to build a business, and also the future of chiropractic work in his eyes. Guys, if you like today's podcast, please subscribe, rate, review, and enjoy my conversation with Dr. Hessam Khatami. Dr. Khatami, how are you, buddy?
Good, man. How are you?
I'm happy to be here at FTX Wellness. That's what I know. I know I'm in the AC and not in a hot, clammy upstairs office that I converted into a podcasting room.
You know what? It's good, but until you have to do something for time on an Airdyne or on a rower, and then it feels like you're breathing icicles, and you wish for the hot, humid environment of a box because you think that it can never be worse than that, but it ends up being 100 times worse.
Listen, I refuse to believe that, okay? Let's get things straight here, Hessam. Thank you very much for having me, first and foremost, and thank you very much for your time. I know you are seeing patients nonstop from day to day, and I know you wear many hats, but maybe a good place to kind of start is, what is it that exactly you do? Should I say what you don't do, or?
So my easiest time is literally spent what I see as my downtime is seeing patients. I don't want to say that that's so automatic because it's like it was ingrained in me by my attending in school to always follow the steps, so I never missed anything. I pride myself on being able to diagnose. So, when I say that that's my downtime, I don't want to say like my brain's turned off, but that's like the most enjoyable time for me during the course of the day, going through the progressions. Sounds so freaking corny, but helping people, like especially people that have been in chronic pain or have been to other doctors and they haven't gotten the solution they need, and all of a sudden it's like, boom, like let's work together. Let me figure out, diagnose you correctly, and then come up with a plan on how to get something fixed. And then besides that, it's all the administrative stuff. And as now the owner of CrossFit Delray Beach for a while, you'll appreciate that. It's intense. It's figuring a lot of stuff out on the fly. I don't have an MBA. They teach you how to be a doctor, but they don't teach you how to run a business, But, and FTX started as sort of my side project along with Octavio Cifuentes, but now it's this behemoth that has grown over the course of the last 4 years. And it's, being a medical director for that, communications, marketing, just everything across the board.
Darn. And not to mention, then you also have to find time for having 2 kids too, right?
They are the best thing ever. It's a massive guilt trip every day because it's like the businesses are sort of like your kid, but especially the ages of my kids. I've got 3 and 5-year-old little boys, and they are absolutely my world. And any parent will tell you that kids at this age, as annoying as those little shits will be, they are the most amazing kids, and everyone's like, oh, those are the best years. So yeah. I know everything I'm putting into this ultimately is for them to have a better life someday, not easier life, but a better life. So it's just finding that balance, But that's my time with them is my favorite time.
So you talk about a better life. Can you kind of give me a little bit of background of where you come from? I know you on a fairly personal level, but also to share your story, but also with the audience as well.
Sure. Very sort of my parents are self-made and they've done well for themselves. My dad was an engineer at a civil engineering company. Busted his ass. I mean, he really did everything he could. Only child. coming from that background, but he worked so hard. I mean, even to this day, for as many hours as I work, my dad was amazing.
You think that's a lot? You should see what I'm doing.
Exactly. But that also was sort of an indicator for me, like, hey, I'm not going to be an engineer. That's for sure. But he worked with the company for years, and for one reason or another, never got the chances to move ahead where he should have. So took that leap. That entrepreneurial leap, and went out on his own. And when really the economy was started, I think his business in 2003-ish. So, I mean, not that far from 2008, and was really able to do pretty well. And then ultimately a couple of years ago, sold to the largest civil engineering company in the U.S. And just through that, just really my parents and my mom came on as a CFO of the company that they had. So both worked very hard through my entire childhood, but very close knit. My mom was like my best friend growing up. That's why I know every 80s song by heart, because that's all what was playing in the car. And then I've been in Florida since I was 3 years old. Went to Atlantic High School right here in Delray. I was in the IB program there. Went to UF for undergrad, and then went out to Houston for chiropractic school, Texas Chiropractic College. So, and ultimately had the chance to come back here and take over a practice in Lighthouse Point. That was 2008. Let's just say the retirement plans for that doctor went out the window at that point. So in early 2009, when he said, you know what, I'm not going to be able to sell to you, but you can stay on as my associate. And I just knew that was not something I was interested in. Yeah. So that's when I started at Atlantic Grove, which was maybe the scariest thing that I've ever chosen to do. But obviously it turned out for the best.
Take me through that process of, you have an opportunity in front of you, but obviously there's probably something underneath you or within you that goes, it sounds sweet, but I'm destined for greater things. Tell me more about that process.
As far as like working with the doctor.
Exactly.
And growing things
and then like you said it was the riskiest thing, but you knew kind of how to do it, or?
It's tough because it's not just chiropractic, but certain professions, whether they mean to or not, they're cannibalistic. They eat their young. They overwork the associates. They even good clinics will overbill the new practitioner's license. And not that they're doing things the wrong way, but just it's really hard to have a healthy relationship with an associate. There's doctors that absolutely do it, and the right way is, you have them work their tail off, and if they meet certain limits, they buy into that's what you want. They want them. You want them to have ultimately skin in the game. They're practitioners. They're working towards that. But ultimately, it's way too easy for a young associate to get taken advantage of. Even under the best of conditions. So that was something that, despite every pro and con, is just something that I was like, you know what? That's a non-starter. This was supposed to go one way. I'm not going down that road, and it was, especially at that point, dear God, getting a business loan to start up a business was not easy, but did a reasonably good job at putting a business plan together. A bank helped me out. Really, a banker went out on a limb, helped me out, and I was able to put two and two together and have a successful practice.
So we will backtrack a little bit in terms of how you chose the profession, but in terms of where we're at now, so you have a business. Someone trusts you enough to go, okay, here's some money, a large chunk of money for you to probably at least rent or buy a location, I imagine.
Right.
You open the doors. How do you get your first patient?
Oh, dear. So I am, I don't mean this in any egotistical way possible. I have never thought of like that whole tabling mentality of going and setting up a table at a fair, at a this, at a that.
The business cards and the thing, and you
Dear
win a free
God,
whatever.
like every chiropractic like marketing thing is like always have like 500 cards, and you have to give out X many per week to like to build your, like that's literally what they tell people. People are paying other people to tell them to do that. But I mean, you got to start out some way. The thing I will always remember, you know, it's amazing. I have the chance right now to work with CrossFit Games champions and professional football, basketball, baseball, collegiate. I'm so blessed to work with the people I do. The first athletes I worked with were at Curves. I would go there and do these like little posture analysis, and the grandmas loved me. It was great. I would go tell them like, listen, this is how you could do better. This is probably what this is being caused by. And, you know, I went off of that ART background, that active release background, not that muscular, you know, where I'm not like traditional structural spinal thing, but the muscular, from this muscular side of things. And they, you know, I was able to communicate with them, and they enjoyed that. And man, they were the sort of the locus of my introduction to getting patients. And grandmas talk, you know, they send their kids in, their grandkids in. That was the beginning.
So what did you do? You went to like these fitness facilities and said, hey, I'd love to be able to offer my services, or just at least give some free evaluations? Was it kind of like that kind of thing?
Yeah. And I always had, even from the beginning, I feel like when a lot of people do that, it's the message that they're trying to send in is, please help me out, you know, let me set up here. And it's sort of about me, you know, when they're asking. I always went in with the message of, how can I help you out? And it was, listen, if I come here, if I get them to feel better, their chances of injury go down, and the less likely they are to put their memberships on hold.
For sure.
Right? So now the owner of that fitness facility is getting something out of it. And that's what I wanted, right? I want them to feel like they're getting something back for allowing me to come into their space, because I had that respect for them, that they were doing that.
Yeah. And then from there, obviously referrals.
That was it. Yeah.
Word of mouth.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. For the first 2 years, I would say the first 2 years of the practice grew a little bit slower. It was almost much more of like a footprint building type of thing. And then, probably one of the biggest things, it was starting to get bigger and bigger. And then one of the biggest things I did was walk into CrossFit Delray Beach that day and talk to Sarah Bowling. And Sarah said probably one of the smartest things ever is, listen, and I was doing muscle therapy. I was doing functional muscle therapy, and CrossFit is functional exercise, right? So they matched up so well. But Sarah told me at that point, and I met you, and she said, you know, if you want to come work with my clientele, I guess, you know, docs had worked with you guys in the past and it didn't go well. You have to come and put the time in here. You guys speak the language. If someone comes in and tells you that they hurt themselves doing a snatch, you have to know the mechanics of that. And looking back, that was everything. You know, being able to put myself in people's shoes is how I make my living. It's that empathy for people.
For sure, and you carved out a nice niche in the field. You mentioned that you worked with CrossFit Games champions, competitors, et cetera, et cetera. How is it, and what kind of interventions are you using for these big slabs of meat?
I will say across the board, it's about having a tool belt. Right. That's one of my biggest knocks on chiro in general, is that we are so ingrained with this mentality that the adjustment fixes everything. And forgive me, doesn't. So the muscle techniques, as far as active release technique, Graston, kinesiotaping, my latest and maybe greatest is the functional dry needling. Those are all amazing techniques, but they're all tools, and depending on what the issue is, certain tools should be used and certain should not. Sometimes the adjustment hurts. Sometimes the adjustment helps. Sometimes the muscle work, if someone's too inflamed, don't do that. Try getting them cooled down with another technique. So it's all a matter of diversifying and having other ways to treat a person depending on what they're coming in with.
For sure. So, what is your most typical maladies that you see clients coming in the more athletic populations?
It's a lot of functional deficits. Probably shoulders and hips are the 1A and 1B of what I deal with, and these are people that are competing at a high level. And so when you are working with them, it's not about, they may have pain, they may be coming in, that may be what caused them to come in, like they aren't able to train like they want to. Some are actually more preventative, and they're seeing that maybe their numbers have plateaued and they're coming in before they have pain. But there's a deactivation of a muscle, whether it's in the shoulder, whether it's in the hip, somewhere else in the body, and that's causing a functional deficit where there's multiple compensations. And if it's on the pain side, they may be having pain in one place where the actual root of the cause is completely somewhere else in the body. Those are some of the most fun to diagnose and treat.
And what are some of the strategies you use to diagnosing? For instance, a person comes in, the front of my shoulders just keeps killing me. What can you do to shove into that?
Yeah.
And how do you kind of discern what actually might be the underlying cause of that?
So one of the, other than the typical orthopedic test, palpation, history, I feel like that's where medicine in the last 50 to 100 years has really just not done their job, is that doctors have gotten very lazy and dependent on technology, on scans to tell them everything. But history is still the most important tool, finding out what the mechanism of injury, like how they hurt themselves. You're 90% of the way there, literally. And then once the exam rolls around, if it's in pain, if the person is in pain, SFMA, selective functional movement assessment, is an amazing tool, possibly the best assessment procedure that we have out there right now. If it's non-painful, if it's more of a performance type of issue, it's more FMS, the functional movement screen, and then there's derivations of that. But yeah, again, just like the treatment side, you need to have multiple avenues of being able to assess as well. And I mean, you use that every day, and we've bounced ideas off each other for years as far as that assessment side, from coaching and then from the medical side.
Yeah, definitely. In my perspective, when I get people in, I'm not looking at people who are, dysfunctional just yet.
Right.
It hasn't manifested in physical pain or inability to perform certain movements.
Or maybe it has, and they just don't know it yet.
100%. They're like, oh, wow, I didn't know my hip pain was associated with the way I squatted, right? But you get a unique perspective because the people who come in to see you are definitely in much more of a receiving type of state. Do you think that kind of mentality of individuals who come in affects the long-term progress and prognosis of those individuals?
I try and shift that focus right off the bat. Mm-hmm. I do not want the patients to subscribe to a paternalistic type of medicine. That's the old style where, hey, the doctor tells you what to do, you shut up, don't ask any questions, just do it and whatever. Patients, for better or worse, mostly for better, are much more informed these days, and that's an absolutely great tool. So being able to guide them and tell them, like, listen, we're in this together. This is your body, and I love telling this to people, and it's something that was a little self-serving when I first started, but I still believe it now. No matter how many letters are behind a person's name, a physician's name, they will never know your body better than you do. So never let yourself get spoken down to, never let someone, speak you into a corner and not answer your questions, get a second, third, fourth, fifth opinion until your gut is telling you that all your questions have been answered and this is really the way to proceed. But you've got to get the person invested in their own health, because if they're not, then there's only so much that you can do with them there. The rest, 99% of their life, if they're not on board with what you're trying to do as far as the treatment plan, you're never going to get them anywhere.
So it seems like one of the biggest tools that you have is educating individuals.
For sure.
Is that something that you really ascribe to, and in what strategies do you use to do that?
I talk my patients' ears off.
Yeah.
I tell every single one, like,
and how do you do that in a way where like the lay person is like, okay, I get it. Thanks, Dr. K.
It's really being able to read the situation depending on a person, the breadth of a person's background is sort of, it's like being able to read the room, right? And knowing, okay, I'm speaking to someone with a strength and conditioning background, or that knows how to do assessments, or they know absolutely nothing about medicine. How do I break this down for them? And it's not dumbing down by any means, but approaching the subject in a way where they are able to pick up on the important parts of it. They may not be able to get the depth that other people do, but they'll definitely be able to get the gist of the situation. So, like I just had a patient that came in with, that had been having terrible neck pain for the last 6 months. And I had to explain to her why she hasn't gotten better to this point, because she's seen multiple practitioners. And I had to tell her, like, listen, this is coming from your shoulder. And I asked her, has anyone ever looked there? She's like, why are you looking at my shoulder? And if you can't get that across to her, like, how am I going to explain why I'm not touching her neck and only working her shoulder, right? You have to be able to find that way to drive that point to the patient. And then on the other side of that, even if I'm able to explain myself, and I tell them, I'm very upfront, I'm like, listen, I may talk a good game, but the proof's in the pudding. I want you to see that you're going to progressively get better with every treatment. I don't want you to think, because people fall into this trap all the time, like, oh, and people ask me, oh, so I'll feel better in like 10 treatments. No, you'll feel better after your first one. So I want them to know that I'm going to explain to them. I want them on board with what we're doing. I want them comfortable with what the diagnosis is, what the treatment is. But ultimately, I want to see that they're functionally improving. That's why every time, like as medical providers, we're supposed to reassess patients every month, depending on if it's a complex case, if it's not a complex case. And a lot of times a person's coming in, I won't even see them for a month and they're already discharged, right? But we're supposed to reassess them every month. I do a little mini reassessment every time they come in, because I want to make sure that what I prescribed is actually working. I'm not going to keep throwing crap down their throat if we're not getting anywhere, right? So it's redoing the quick functional assessments, redoing a couple of orthopedic tests, and then again, taking that time, seeing how they felt, how things changed, how sore were they after the last treatment. All of that sort of goes into that conglomerate of all the different techniques that I've picked up across the years to allow me to adjust on the fly.
So as people are starting to listen to this and they start to kind of think about their own maladies and insufficiencies or things they want to get better with, you probably see very common things of the shoulder, the hip, and that kind of thing. But what are some things that a regular person who's a fitness enthusiast, whatever level they are, they can start to do on their own to allow them to, I know this sounds weird, to not have to see you?
Oh, that's what I love.
Yeah.
Right? So, and that's why that I want to teach them, because when I love saying this to people, when I prescribe a treatment plan, they are done at the end of that treatment plan. There's no maintenance is a curse word in my clinic, right? If people want maintenance, they can get body work, get massage every so often, right? Depending on how busy they are. But, foam rolling is a great tool. Heat. The reason why we warm up before a workout, as you know, is generally not only for activation, but blood flow. Blood flow is our natural muscle relaxer, right? And then, mobility. I love, for the layperson, even for someone that doesn't do CrossFit, ROMWOD's a great tool because it's not just it's not just directed towards one part of the body, but you're sitting there and you're able to go through step by step, day by day, different areas of the body that will allow you to not miss anything, basically. So I want them to take their own health in their hands.
And at what point do you say, all right, it's time for you to actually have some intervention?
That's a good question.
Because I mean, just like, giving you some context, there's so many people who are like, yeah, man, I've had this, clicking in my shoulder for like 3 or 4 months now. I just been like lacrosse balling my pec and my shoulder. What are some telltale signs? Like, dude, you got to go see someone who actually knows what they're talking about.
One is, I talked about the mechanism of injury, right? So there are the vast majority of people I see, they're not coming in because there was trauma, right? There wasn't one, like a moment, like an owl moment is what I call it, right?
You fell over, you felt the snap,
exactly. Those
you were
are
in a
easy,
motor vehicle accident, right? Or something like that.
Those are easy. Then at that point is like, give it a couple of days, do the things to get it better. If it's not getting better, see someone at that point, right? However, it's always the cases where something is building up over time because of an imbalance. I call them time bombs, right? And it'll be because one of the first things I ask people when they come in is, what caused this? Mechanisms of injury again. And if they don't know, if there's no cause, then we're really going back and trying to see over time what changed. What position are they in during the day, at work? What do they do as far as activity? What don't they do, right? Sometimes that's it. And being able to sort of put that picture together sort of allows me to guide not only the history, but the treatment at that point.
Yeah, for sure. So speaking of history, when was the first time you've heard of chiropractic?
Probably when I was 13, and
13.
it was not a good first experience.
So you actually went to a chiropractor when you were 13. Can you describe what happened?
Driving with my mom, got in an accident. Attorney sent us to, we were living in Boynton, sent us to a chiropractor in Okeechobee. So skeezy. Got up there.
Stay away from the Okeechobee chiropractors,
dear
guys.
God, no. But would go lay down on the table, and I'm like, I'd been to doctors before where that, asked me questions, and whether I was, because I was a kid or whatever, basically sat me on the table, didn't ask me anything, ended up doing took an x-ray, did the flying 7 is what we call it, adjusted everything. There was no direction. It was like a industrial line. There's nothing that he was actually treating. He was just doing the whole body at that point. And we probably went 2 or 3 times, and it was really, my mom wanted to make sure I was okay. And after the 3rd time, I told my mom in the car on the way back, I'm never going back. And I remember my mom being like, the attorney is calling and yelling at me because we're not going, again, skeezy. I'm like, I am not going back to that quack. From there, I never had another experience with chiro until I got to, I was at UF, and something that a lot of kids on their way to med school do is that they volunteer in hospitals. I was shadowing 2 pediatric oncologists at Shands for about 2 years. And they are the ones that actually sat me down and said, listen, when we take you on rounds, it takes us much longer to get through rounds because you want to speak to the patients, ask them about their lives, make sure we stay in the room to get all their questions answered. And you genuinely love that patient experience. And you have to know for the first basically 7 to 10 years of when you go to medical school, you're not going to be able to do that. And they said, we admire that about you. We don't want to see that crushed. And they're the ones, one of them had a friend that was a chiropractor, like, and they knew I wanted to go to orthopedics anyway. So like, why don't you check this out? You can go right into having your own clinic or working with a doctor and having that clinical experience rather than doing that. And of course, at first, when they sat me down, I'm like, what did I do wrong? Why don't you want me to just to go to med school? Like at that point, I've taken all my practice MCATs. I've done well. I'm signed up to take the test. And they're like, it's really about what we've seen as time has gone on. So that was really, an amazing message. That talk with my parents was something.
But to some, you were going to be a doctor.
Yeah, pretty much. And but I told them how it went down, and I'd always told them about the doctors I work with. So they, coming from the source. And then I came here, actually worked with followed the doctor that ultimately I was going to buy out his practice, and liked what I saw and saw that I could do things sort of my own way and what little I knew at that point, and said, yeah, this will work.
Okay, so it was last week I got a chance to speak with a chiropractor in training.
Right.
He's in his third year, Ian Kaplan, and I kind of put him to the fire a little bit in regards to perceptions of what chiropractic work is about. And I think the beautiful thing that's going on right now is that we have so much access to information nowadays. And I think the days of allopathic medicine or allopathic medicine being the gold standard are starting to be questioned a little bit. Obviously, for obvious reasons of efficacy, when we look at things like placebo, and we go, wait a second, you're giving these medications, but they are as good, if not worse, than placebo. And more of that information is coming out where we start to see that, FDA trials are not as what they seem to be. You can do 20 different trials, take the one that you like and throw out 19 and no one will ever know about it. We look at
Statistics are an amazing thing.
Absolutely. Here at the Flock Fitness Longevity, Wellness and Longevity Podcast, we try to make up as many statistics on the spot. We do not fact check.
There we go.
So along with the fact that so many more chiropractors are having voices now, and they have so many more tools on the tool chest, can you give me a defense of chiropractic work in 2019?
I am a chiropractor that does not hate allopathic medicine.
Oh,
not to go down on a tangent, allopathic medicine saved my life. As you know from my past, I had cancer when I was 16. So it would be very narrow-minded and short-sighted of me to just barbarize what is happening in allopathic medicine as far as medications. Do we overprescribe? Absolutely. Do we use medications just because of the incentivized system that pharmaceutical companies have built? Absolutely. Are there things that have to change with medications? Absolutely. But there's a time and place for everything. People have to understand that. The biggest problem with medicine these days is ego. That's simply it. You walk into a doctor's office rather than there being this team mentality of saying, listen, first, am I the right doctor to see this patient? There's, okay, I'm the shit, I'm the one that's going to help this person, I don't want them to see anyone else. Why? You're doing a disservice to that patient at that point. There's no way, however schooled and intelligent and learned overall that person, there's no way they can do it all themselves, right? So there's good and bad with every profession. Chiropractic gets a bad rap because there's a lot of bad apples. There's no defense to that, right? But there have always been two schools of thought within chiropractic: the straight chiropractic mentality where the adjustment is the end-all be-all, the body's going to heal itself, and then there's the mixed chiropractic philosophy where we do a lot more rehab. As time has gone on, the shift between the two, there's always been this internal civil war within chiropractic. Again, ego. like what are you doing? But people are getting much more on top of the evidence-based train, which in this day and age, how do you not want to research? The toughest thing about chiro and why it will never be studied at the level that allopathic medicine is that you simply, no one up to this point has been able to figure out a double-blind study on adjustment. No one's been able to figure out how to do that. And until someone figures that out, you can't accurately figure out what the adjustment exactly does. There have been studies that have been done that shows adjustments overall are better for back pain than narcotics and stuff like that for long term. But to actually know what the adjustment does in a journal double-blind way, it's seemingly impossible. Someone will figure it out. But the evidence-based part of chiropractic really again, making statistics in the last 50 years has really it's come a long way. It's come a long way. So, but there again, on the converse side, there's still kids coming out to this day that are fresh out of school that just believe adjusting the spine is the only thing that's going to get a person better, and you shouldn't touch anything else. Right?
For sure. And again, like even in I just personally, I find chiropractic work, just like anything else, it's a basis of learning. It's a basis of education. It's a basis of understanding what the body looks like.
Right.
And then from there, it's up to the individual chiropractor or any practitioner of finding what tools they want to use and then implementing that. I think another big part about it is, patient interaction. Mm-hmm. And I think when we look at this day and age of cramming as many patients in and billing as many patients as you can, being able to sit down and be like, yo, this is, and talk about their pain, mm-hmm. which not many other professions and, treatment methodologies actually allow you to do. Mm-hmm. So what is your perspective in terms of sitting down and talking about people's pain?
It's really just about taking the time. Like, let's put pain aside. One of the biggest problems why people feel like sometimes I'm just a number in this clinic is that they're in and out. Like our primary care physicians in the United States, they're just so overworked. And at some point, they never thought, maybe they did, maybe they didn't, know what it was going to be to have to see 50 to 100 patients in a day. And that's the reason that they can't spend the time that I'm sure at one point they wanted to. But because we have a shortage, that's how overworked our primary care system is. But that's and again, this is one of the benefits with chiropractic is you build the type of clinic that you want. So it's, there are chiros out there that see 500 patients a week. I have no idea how they do that. They go in, again, probably do a flying 7 in a room, pass them on into a chiropractic associate who puts them on stim, puts them on traction. They get a 15-minute massage and this assembly line again, right? And then there's guys that may see, like the max I've seen in a week is 125. I see people in 15 to 30-minute windows because I want to be able to have that time to speak to them. And that time is possibly the most, it sounds so corny, but like the most precious thing that you can do for that patient, because imagine how much is missed if that communication does not occur, right? Again, that was my mentality coming out of school. That was driven home to me in the most, what's the adjective? In the most profound way. 3 months in, I had a 78-year-old gentleman that came in to see me, had hip pain, was the driver on a Century Village bus. Again, one of those nice old ladies that said, hey, this is the guy that drives me. He's always talking about his hip. Go see this kid. Mm-hmm. And he comes in, I take a thorough history, in that, and this guy was in pain. He's like, can you just adjust me? Had been to chiropractors in the past. And I do a thorough history, and you're going to know where this goes quickly. Had a history of prostate cancer, had been in remission for 10 years. And I told him, listen, I know you're in pain. You're going to hate me, but I really want you to go see your oncologist, get some imaging, and then come back and see me. Was actually able to get in pretty quickly for that specialty. Came back 2 weeks later. He had extensive metastasis in his body. Had I adjusted him, I possibly could have shattered his head. 3 months into practice, and it's at that point, it's like facing a patient who's then dying, and I did as much as I could for him, utilizing ART and other soft tissue means, but he wasn't long for the world after that. So it was hard at that point, and I've had a handful of individuals I basically diagnosed something terminal with, through the years, and it's again, I wouldn't have been able to do that if I did not spend the time to ask the right questions, right? And it's long term, did it help them? No, there's nothing I could have done for them from the saving life means, but that just shows you, though, on patients who have typical diagnoses, if you don't ask the right questions, you're doing a massive disservice.
For sure, man. And I think that goes back to what we had talked about earlier in terms of like, if you are having issues and they're not resolving under, conservative means on your own, soft tissue work, you're foam rolling, you're doing that kind of stuff, just go see somebody. Whether it is a chiro, whether it's a physical therapist, someone who specializes in understanding of the body and the mechanics of the body. And I think you're doing yourself a big disservice if you think and obviously ego involved as well, of thinking I'm invincible, this thing will resolve on my own. It just doesn't work like that.
And my goal is, with that initial interaction, is to teach them to the extent that when I discharge them, for them to understand, listen, God forbid you get injured again or something comes up. Now I've taught you what you can do to help yourself. Don't immediately call me. I want you to try, using the tools that you have learned as we've gone through these steps of getting you better. If you do those, give yourself, a couple of days, a week of doing those things. If you're not seeing a change, then come back. Give me a call. I'm here for you. But my whole goal is to get people educated on their bodies. I'm just a glorified mechanic. I'm trying to find people's flat tires, change them, and send them on their way. I want them to be able to take a temperature on their own bodies, without being sort of a slave to a person. So it's yes, the overall message is yes, make use of someone who knows what they're doing mechanically, but don't be completely dependent on them as well.
Yeah, for sure. So where do you see the world of chiropractic medicine going in the next 10 to 20 years? We've seen it looks like a profound shift in the last, let's say, 10 to 15 years with the more information that's coming out and the more readily available stuff. If you just look at Instagram and the number of chiropractors who have Instagrams and who are thinking outside of the box, outside of that conventional thinking.
Right.
And I think in a lot of ways, they are doing the chiropractic community a great service.
For sure.
In taking away a lot of the old ways of thinking, the taboo that is chiropractic work.
Right.
Where do you see this going in the next 10 to 20 years?
Hopefully it keeps evolving to the point where I think the next great evolution is going to be one of the things that has changed in the last 10 years is chiropractors are being allowed and are on staff at VA hospitals. Oh, nice. Okay. Huge.
Yeah, for sure.
Anything that we can do to help the veterans is obviously, we want to be able to have that service covered. But getting to the point where the efficacy of what we do is recognized because we have gotten so much better to be on staff in those settings, so that we are on presumptively the same level. And it doesn't matter at the end of the day. That's not meant in an ego way to be on the same level as, because that's not the important thing, but it's the access to care, right? Because imagine how many people, the most, and again, I don't want to make up statistics, but the most common thing that primary care physicians see is back pain.
Yeah. And
they are simply not taught what to do with it. They like go see an ortho, go see a PT, go do this and that. So the vast majority, unless that primary care has had positive interaction with a quality chiropractor, that patient, the majority of those patients are never seeing chiropractors, right? So it's the access to care so that the good chiropractic therapies are more widespread. The biggest compliment I get is when people, just as sort of like an internal dialogue that they're speaking, say, why don't more people know about this? Mm-hmm. And it's not the old chiropractic means people know about that, but it's this in between of like this functional medicine is one thing, but as far as muscles go, that functional type of medicine in terms of finding these different imbalances and curing them, and because it's sort of this in between chiro, PT, massage, orthopedics. And so really taking this, and by no means am I saying that's the best thing, but for now it's really what people are seeing is working, but taking that and making that the standard. Wouldn't that be great?
For sure.
But I can't tell you the volumes more that I've learned in the 10 years outside that I've been in school, rather than the 3.5, 4 years that I was in school. It's just that's sometimes the stumbling block as well, because it's just continuing education, like to pay for it. Tests are scary. You don't want to take tests after you're done with school, but it's just knowing that you're doing it to help more people in a better way. For sure.
I'd like to talk to you a little bit about working with the FAU football team.
Sure.
The Owls are on the up and up.
Yeah.
Laney Kiffin is over there. He's creating this monster that seems like he is invested in, and he's in for the long haul. How is it? How's the experience working with now? I would say probably like a top 50 football team in the country.
It's been awesome. The Owls are just the students come and go, the student athletes come and go. Even I've been through 5 coaching staffs, which is
You're not that old.
I don't have that many more fingers on my hand. But it's the core of the athletic department has been somewhat consistent going through, and it's almost like, geez, we've put our time in. It's about time, right? Because starting with Coach Snellenberger, which did everything for the Owls to bring them to the point that they became Division I and got that stadium built. Owls used to play in a high school stadium.
Yeah.
Like, how do you recruit?
For sure, man.
like it was amazing that they could even have a Division I program in that way. To the point of where we are, it's like, that core group, we've really put our time in to be able to enjoy working with the staff that we have now. And it's sort of, it's the administration, and I've been able to benefit to see sort of behind the curtain on a couple of things on, how Lane came in and why he stayed here and all that stuff. But they've really done a profoundly great job at really upping their game and making this a destination and upping the facilities so that someone of Lane's basically achievements would want to come in and work with FAU at the end of the day. It's been fun. And if no one's been to a game, there's really not a bad seat in the house. And it's a great couple of hours. We tend to have an exorbitant amount of rain delays.
That's seriously a problem, isn't it?
It's huge. The first game of Lane's career was against Navy, and we had 4 rain delays.
What did it rain at like 3 a.m. or something like that?
That's when I left the field. The team ate dinner in the middle of the third quarter, and then we went back out on the field. And it was an experience.
That must have been a rough week after that.
Oh dear God. Yeah. I mean, it was Lane's first game. There were talks during the game of, do we shut it down, because Navy was up a couple of touchdowns.
Yeah.
And but you can't fault the guy. That's his first game that
he
wants to finish that out.
You can't be going that, man.
Exactly. So and up to that point, I think Miami was the year after that. Navy had been the biggest team we had at the
for
stadium
sure
up to that point. So it was but again, it's been absolutely amazing seeing, being on a sideline at a high school field to being on a sideline on national television. One of my best experiences was being able to go up with the team when they played UF. Obviously I went there. I bleed orange and blue, so the experience for me was like people that say it's like watching both their kids play each other on the field. It's FAU almost pulled it out, and like when I go back and I still have the game recorded, everyone's going just like crazy on the sideline after a big tackle or turnover, and I'm sitting there doing a golf clap.
Yeah.
It was I was so conflicted. As far as like present day, just across the board, not only the people, but the facilities that they have now just are, I mean, there are cops that come in and do the security that work at stadiums around the nation. And they have said we have like a top 10, it's crazy to say this, but we have like a top 10 facility with a lot, like our treatment center and a lot of stuff like that. Not the size of the stadium, but our facilities are really getting up there.
It's not about the size of the stadium, you know what I said? But so Hessam, like I said, we're here at FTX Wellness. What are some of the services that we have here at FTX Wellness?
Chiro, obviously, physical therapy, acupuncture. We have registered dietitians on staff. Massage. One of the newest things that we just brought in is a regenerative medicine practice. So we're doing PRP, stem cell, peptides, vitamin infusions, hormonal workups. We're also doing some stuff on the cosmetic side as far as Botox and things like that.
Could smooth out my dome.
There you go. It's so shiny. And it's actually attached to a cosmetic facility down in Miami Beach as well. So that's something that we have. So the 3 main groups that we help at FTX, going from basically the athletic side, we have a combine program that we put on. We work with professional athletes. Obviously we do all the strength conditioning for Lynn University. We love doing that. Have a great relationship with Lynn. Their AD is a huge proponent, a huge cheerleader for us. He's awesome. Devin. And then it's the general population that are coming in, getting one-on-one personal training with our trainers, our awesome trainers. They're able to make use of all of our medical services as well. And then the thing that we are profoundly proud of is our work with the recovery community. And myself and Octavio came together and we built this holistic intervention. We're not treating the addiction. We work with the recovery center so that as they are helping these patients with the mental side of addiction, we want to come in and help on the physical side. So you look at the opiate crisis these days. From the medical side, I took my foundational thinking as far as wanting to get people actually healed rather than managing them, and saying, why do people have to continually go back into recovery, especially on the opioid side and alcohol side? People are, at some point, they were overprescribed. And then if they could keep getting their pills, their hands on pills, they keep taking them.
Yep.
If they couldn't, they start using alcohol as a way to drown out the pain. So they're going to these recovery centers, and the recovery centers are doing all they can on the mental side. But once they get sober, guess what comes back? Mm-hmm. The pain, the physical duress. So why not create a physical intervention so that as the mental part of it is coming along, they can physically not only get better, but be stronger by the time that they are done. That way, we're not only, getting rid of any old physical issues that they had, that these patients had, but also reducing the chances of future injury. Because obviously this injury or whatever it was caused them to go down this path. So if we're decreasing the chances, man, we can't do any better than that. So we are profoundly excited. That's what we're most passionate about.
That's awesome. So Dr. K, what's the best way we can get a hold of you if you would like to solicit your services?
Yeah. Website, ftxwellness.com. As far as the seeing me personally, AtlanticGroveChiro.com. Our phone number, obviously website, email, everything's on there. Got some social media. It's really just pictures of my kids. So I don't do anything there. But on the FTX side, we've got some great social media. We show a lot of the stuff that we do with our athletes. And social media is tricky on the medical side because, HIPAA and everything, privacy.
For sure.
But and then on the collegiate side, because there's NCAA regulations. So we got to tiptoe around things, but FTX, we do a good job on the social media side.
Absolutely. And I'll attest to Dr. Khatami's skills and techniques. I've been seeing Dr. K for probably close to 8 years now.
That's crazy.
We've been working together. I remember when you were fat, Hessam.
I will always tell people, Sean's the one that figured out, and people are going to hate me. Sean's the one that figured out when I started CrossFit, I actually gained weight.
Yeah,
the
for
first
sure.
month I was there, and I don't know if this is true. Was I the first individual athlete that you programmed for?
Definitely, for sure.
And so he's like, I think you have a problem with your cortisol because I'm on my feet all day, seeing patients, and then I was coming and working out at 6:30, trying to keep up. And you figured out I had a problem with my cortisol level, and you're like, you know what? We're just going to take cardio out, and you're just going to lift heavy. And one of the other
and eat right,
and eat right. But as far as the eating goes, you also told me if you remember to eat half a pint of ice cream. After,
I kind of did, yes.
And I lost 40 pounds in 4 months. So not that I'm saying eat ice cream and you lose weight, but that's what worked for me. And you figured that out, man. That was good for you.
Yeah, I appreciate that. But like I said, he's an invaluable resource to me and tons of clients that I worked with as well. I don't bat an eye in terms of sending my most precious athletes to come see Dr. Khatami. So if you do have issues or anything like that and you're not resolving them on your own, he is available. And I know that he is definitely worth it.
Thanks, buddy.
Thank you very much for spending some time with me today, Dr. Khatami. And I appreciate everything that you do, man. And hopefully maybe I'll have you on the podcast again sometime soon.
Absolutely.
Awesome, man. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thanks.
And there you have it. Thank you very much for listening to my conversation with Dr. Hessam Khatami. Guys, if you like today's podcast, please subscribe, rate, and review. We come out with new podcasts every Tuesdays and Thursdays. Thursdays are our new conversations, and we'll see you next time on the Fitness, Wellness, and Longevity Podcast.